Warning, due to some language and subject matter, listener discretion is advised.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Almost 2 decades ago, a mutual friend introduced me to our next guest. Following that was many years of friendship and support of each other's musical projects. His based out of Minneapolis and mine based out of Omaha. In that time, he has also become quite the marketing guru in his own regard as the creative director for Decibel Consulting and Design, all while maintaining his 19-year-long musical powerhouse project, Throw the Fight. Joining me on the podcast today is my friend Ryan Baustert. We're going to talk about where he's been, where he's going, and what it took to get 40 million streams on Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Caught on the Mic. From the Great White North, it's my old friend Ryan from Throw the Fight. How the heck are you, brother?
I'm good, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for doing the show. I mean, I've been talking about having you on for quite some time. I've actually had a few requests to have you on, and our mutual friend Dusty Grant down in Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah, Dusty's a good dude.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're from Omaha, man.
Yeah.
So how you been? How's life?
Good, man. It's been good, you know? It's just same old music stuff, art stuff, dad life. You know how it goes, you know? We're not spring chickens anymore, that's for sure.
Don't remind me, man.
We're definitely we're old men playing a young men's game at this point, that's for sure.
Yeah. You know, I had that moment back in August whenever I looked at all the albums that came out in 1991 that turned 30 in August this last year. And I was like, holy shit. I remember going crazy? And buying every single one of those albums.
Dude, totally. Dude, I was thinking yesterday how I used to walk down the hall in junior high with my Walkman and stuff, like rocking Alice in Chains. Like that was my jam back in the day, you know, the junior high days and stuff like that with, you know, your Walkman and your cassettes and everything like that. Like
For real. So what are you listening to right now?
Right now? Right now, a few different bands. There's a band I really like from Sweden called Reminisce. They're fantastic. Okay. So I'm listening to those guys, Dragged Under, Upon a Burning Body. Those are like my 3 in rotation right now.
Awesome.
What about you?
Yeah, you know, honestly, I'm listening to Rhymesayers stuff. I'm listening to stuff from your hometown, like nonstop. Nonstop. So it's all hip hop for me right at the moment.
Yep.
But
cool.
You and I met each other back, and I can tell you exactly when. It was 2004. It is 18 years ago now.
Isn't that crazy?
There's the old man card.
Yeah, totally.
And we met through a mutual friend, and, you know, me having bands in Omaha, Nebraska, and you having Throw the Fight in Minneapolis, we got the opportunity to play some shows together and exchange ideas and trade shows back and forth. And it's been a fun journey because we got to know each other in the advent of social media.
Yep.
Just as it was getting started.
That's true.
So I know that's a big part of where your life is at now, specifically with your career, with your marketing, and with music. So why don't you take this opportunity, introduce yourself, tell your origin story, the origin story of Throw the Fight, how you got into music, and where it all kind of led you to right this moment in time.
Sure, yeah. The thing that got me into music originally was my dad, and it's important to talk about, like, our drummer, Jeff, is also my little brother. So Jeff and I have been jamming together since we were kids, you know, in my parents' basement. And in the early days, it was, you know, my dad was like into Metallica and Black Sabbath, so he got me into that stuff, and that was what got me into guitar. And then from there, I just kind of like, you know, went down the rabbit hole of the metal, you know, and punk rock and then, you know, grunge and all of that stuff, and just tried to like listen to as much of that stuff as I could. Like the bug had bit me hard, you know. And then to go along with it, art and design have always kind of like gone hand in hand. So I've just always wanted to do, both music and design, like ever since I was in junior high. So I went to college in Wisconsin for graphic design. And during the tail end of my college career, started Throw the Fight in like 2002 or 2003, somewhere around there. And then just started, growing it from there.
And then you kind of started applying what you learned in college to the marketing for Throw the Fight, correct?
Yeah, totally. So what's funny is, back when I was in college, this was like the early days of the internet. Like the internet was way uglier than it is right now, So we didn't even do a lot of like web design and digital marketing or anything like that. That was all stuff I learned post college, like on the job training. Just being like in various companies, like in-house marketing departments and things like that, So I always had like a really good side hustle of like, I started out doing like MySpace websites, believe it or not, like that was how I taught myself web design and HTML and CSS and all of that stuff. So started doing, MySpace sites and getting involved with other artists that way. And it just kind of went hand in hand because, we still had Throw the Fight and we were still working with a lot of other artists too. So it's kind of all, it just kind of all works. It's great, So that's, haven't looked back, but obviously not doing MySpace anymore, but, now we're doing actual websites, which is great, and a lot of other stuff too, a lot of like digital marketing and helping other artists grow their fan base and things like that. So it's a little bit of a lot of different things.
Yeah. I've got a common conversation that I have with a lot of friends. Do you think MySpace in its old 2005 form could ever make a comeback? Because I think people miss it.
Well, yeah. I mean, it would be cool. The best thing about MySpace back in the day is that you could take your page and do whatever you wanted to with it. In theory, it was a blank slate. And then they kind of started getting away from that and going towards like these very generic templates and it just got downhill from there, So, and then I don't know what happened, but obviously people left in droves, but, yeah, I mean, to me, it would be cool, it would be cool for the nostalgia, that's for sure. But, these days you got to go where the audience is, and it's definitely not MySpace.
No shit. But the thing is like, the thing that I remember about that point in time is MySpace, and a successful MySpace page was a game changer. It could make or break a band. I hate to say this, but you almost didn't have to be that great of a band to have a good marketing strategy through MySpace.
You don't. And I mean, you still don't to an extent. I mean, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. You still need to like strive for great songs and great music and everything like that. That's going to be the core of everything. But no amount of, branding and digital marketing will cover that up, So that's like the basis. But yeah, I mean, you could do so many cool things, and now it's obviously evolved. It's much better now than it was. That's for sure. I mean, yeah. People have it so.
I'm sure.
I mean, the sky is the limit now. Like, there's so many opportunities out there. It's great. So that's what I love about it, is just the explosion and how it's completely changed the game. Like within the last 5 years, even 5 to 10 years. So.
Do you remember the first time we brought you to Omaha? Do you remember that show at all?
Yes, kind of. It was so long ago, dude.
Let me refresh your memory.
I remember it was a lot of fun. And did we ever play with the Reagan era too?
Yes, it was with Reagan era.
That's what I thought. Was it? Okay.
Yeah, because we were in the process of transitioning from the band I was in, 3QE, to changing our name to Reagan Era. And Reagan Era only lasted for about a year before we did Right Side Impact, and then we did RSing. Yep. So all of that aside, this was kind of towards the tail end of the famed Ranch Bowl being open. And those of you that are not familiar with what the Ranch Bowl was, it was an entertainment venue complex in Omaha, Nebraska that was almost legendary. It was the Forrest Gump of music venues. Every famous person before they became famous set foot in the Ranch Bowl. I mean, I remember seeing Fall Out Boy to a crowd of 17 people in the Ranch Bowl at one point in time.
So crazy.
So Reagan Era was going to bring Throw the Fight down for a show. It was with our buddies in Trip and Default, and Ranch Bowl had 3 different bars inside of it that all hosted shows. For some reason, all the booking got screwy, and we all got put into the main venue, opening up for Viking metal band 3 Inches of Blood.
3 Inches of Blood,
that?
That's right. Dude, you know what? As you were just describing this, I was like, I know we played with this metal band that was so insane, and I couldn't remember the name. It was 3 Inches of Blood. Yes, you are right.
And you remember my drummer, Doug, at the time?
Yeah. Yeah.
So whenever he had his drums up on the riser, the 3 Inches of Blood banner was like, it looked like 3 inches, and then there was Doug sitting there. So it was like 3 inches of Doug. That made for years worth of jokes afterwards.
I love that.
And
Poor
you
Doug.
guys brought us to Minneapolis, and I'm going to tell you something that I've never shared with you, but those trips to Minneapolis were life-changing for me. Like,
that's awesome.
And in a good way. And getting to know you and getting to meet you and watching you from afar changed how I handled marketing on the local level here in Omaha, Nebraska and Lincoln, Nebraska. So, you know, I've never had that opportunity to tell you. You had a very, very profound impact on me on the things
That's so cool.
You did right and you still do right. So I've always admired you from afar because you've done great work.
I appreciate that, Mike. That's super nice of you to say.
Well, I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. I'm kind of crazy like that. So in your time with Throw the Fight, what are some of the greatest experiences that you've had as a member of that band?
For sure, just recording over the years with a lot of amazing producers and engineers, that has been game changing for us. We've been able to work with a lot of really great people and tour with and play shows with a lot of really great bands. I mean, the highlight for sure is Bullet for My Valentine and Black Veil Brides. That was a while ago at this point, you know, but it was like 2012 or 2013, somewhere like that. But that tour was insane for us and opened a lot of doors and put us in front of a lot of people. So that's always a highlight. Getting to tour Canada, we've been to Canada twice at this point, and Canada is fantastic. You know, just people there are super, super nice and welcoming. It's completely different than playing in the States. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
I feel like I haven't been to Europe yet, but I feel like that's the case in Europe too. You know, like it's just a different culture, you know, and those countries appreciate the arts a lot more, I think, you know, so sure. That's different. But yeah, I don't know. Those are the things that kind of stick out to me for sure.
Back in, what was it, 2011, 2012, you guys recorded with John Feldman too, didn't you?
Yeah, John Feldman and his engineer at the time, Brandon Paddock, who is an insanely talented dude. Yeah,
so talk a little bit about that experience. What was that like?
So I got a hold of Feldman on MySpace, believe it or not. At the time, yeah, I mean, at the time it was like 2011. You know, and he had a MySpace page that basically just said, hey, if you're interested in recording, you know, hit us up. And we just dropped him a message, and he was into the band, you know, and what we had previously put out. So he's like, yeah, let's do this. And we went out and did a record with him and Brandon Paddock. We did like 12 tracks in 3 weeks, maybe something like that, and worked out of his house that time. So very, very cool experience.
Now, Throw the Fight has had some songs used for commercial use, haven't you?
Early on. Like, it hasn't been for a long time, but like early 2005, 2006. Yep.
Yeah. And what tracks and where were they used? Don't be afraid to name drop, bro.
No, it was we worked with a music publisher based in Minneapolis called In the Groove. And we licensed our first EP to them, so they had a lot of luck placing 4 songs from our very first EP on like MTV and VH1 and Spike, and a lot of those shows, you know. So that was really cool. But haven't had any placements, you know, since then. Those were the biggest ones. But that's a tough game. That's a completely different animal, like sync licensing and all that stuff. It's yeah, a different animal completely.
That's kind of where I wanted to transition to is, you know, the evolving business of music. I have not been in it now for 10 years. It's crazy to think about that. It's even crazier to say it out loud. But in the last 10 years, streaming has taken over. Physical copies have kind of gone back to vinyl, and compact discs are not as relevant. I'm sure they're still relevant, but not as relevant. Yep. And everything has kind of gone digital. So how have you leveraged that for yourself and for the band?
So for us, it's not really as easy as saying it's like a handful of things. I mean, it's a lot of things that are kind of like contributing to the overall picture and the growth. But I would say like within the last like 3 to 4 years, like we've seen a massive shift between people like downloading music on iTunes and whatnot to almost completely moving over to like streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music. That's in our case. I mean, there's obviously other artists where, they're making the majority of their income, from touring or selling physical products or any number of different ways. But for us, like 95% of our revenue is from streaming. So that was the biggest change, and for us, it's more about putting out less music more frequently. So we're trying to just put out a lot more singles, and just, not focus on albums as much. Like we were talking about this with the guys yesterday, like it's just the way that people listen to music now has changed so much that, if you work on an album and maybe you put out 4 or 5 singles in advance of it, your audience, you still have half of it that your audience isn't even going to hear for the most part, so it's people's consumption has completely changed in that regard. So we're trying to like put less music out more frequently and just keep writing and just kind of like act as our own label and build the business that way, focus less on social media and more on like the assets that you own, which is, email marketing, your email list and your website and e-commerce and stuff like that. I mean, the same thing with social media, like, people's attention span is so short now. You're competing with like news feeds and algorithms, and that is just a lose-lose battle, So for us, we've always tried to focus on using social media as tools to connect with the right people and then get those people off of social media and onto our email list and so that we can like stay in touch a little bit better. And so that's a big part of it. And then just playing shows and playing live as much as we possibly can and getting in front of people because, at the end of the day, especially for a rock band, if that you can do all the internet marketing and paid advertising you want to, but it's still not going to have as big of an impact as playing live and being able to like have, interact with people face to face and do that. So it's a combination of all that stuff for the most part.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting to hear you say that because the way I personally feel about email marketing is it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. It cycles up and it cycles down. And to hear that it's still a relevant form of marketing, I know when it first started, people were really engaged with emails. And then it kind of went through this phase when social media ticked up where people were more engaged with social media. So are you seeing engagement rates increase with your email marketing, or are they leveled out? How does that work for you?
Well, the engagement is much better than social media. That's for sure. Like if we're posting stuff organically on Facebook or anywhere, the reach and the engagement is a fraction of what we see like on our email list. With our list, we're typically getting, anywhere from 30 to 40% open rates on our emails and then getting click rates of like 2 to 3%. And those percentages are 5x what you typically see on social media, at least in our case. That's obviously not the case for everybody. Everyone's different, but it's just the classic 80-20 rule, I mean, like 80%, how does it go? I'm going to butcher this, but like 80% of your results are from 20% of your efforts. Isn't that what it is? I don't know. You know what I mean? But so we just focus on that, it's like you don't have to. I think there's a lot of pressure, especially these days, to, with people like on social media and posting all the time and things like that you have to be everywhere and doing all the things. And that's just simply not true. You just have to do a handful of things really well and repeatedly, and just never quit until you're dead.
Right.
So
right.
That's what we're doing.
Right. It's kind of finding where your audience is at and just sinking into that and just doing one thing well as opposed to doing multiple things half-assed, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. So, yeah, I mean, we've just developed a lot of, systems and processes and tiny habits over the years, and just we just work that, that's pretty much it.
Sure. And so just so people know how effective this is for you, what are your current plays at on a platform like Spotify? I already know the answer to this, but our audience doesn't.
Yeah, they're solid. So, we've got I don't know, it goes up and down, right? So it's all depending on, when you're putting out music and stuff like that. There's obviously going to be, spikes and dips, but we typically average 250,000 on Spotify alone. That's where we see 95% of our activity. It's pretty much Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Those are the three. Everything else is, the stuff is out there, but it's a very, very far, second place. So.
Sure. And the reason I was going to that is because I went to your personal website and some of the coaching that you've been doing through your personal website, and I saw the number 40 million, and I'm like, what? Do you have 40 million spins on Spotify?
Yeah, even more. I mean, that's cumulative. That's our entire discography.
That's what I was getting at, was cumulatively.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
For sure. But here's the thing. There's the narrative is there's no money to be made on this, and
right.
We all know it's fractions of a penny, and everyone wants it to be higher, of course, but you can't really do much about that at the end of the day. The only thing you can really do is learn how to work this stuff into your favor, and it's like a snowball rolling down a hill, there's momentum, and this stuff compounds. It's just like contributing to your 401k, it's there's compounding interest, and there's a snowball effect, and you can absolutely make money from this stuff. Now, granted, we're not paying our mortgages from Spotify, but it's a good chunk of change that we're making every month, largely on autopilot, that we're just able to, pay ourselves a very small salary every month and have money for marketing and have money to, do recording and videos and all the stuff we want to do independently. It's just a nice little music business for us at this point. We're super thankful there's even an audience there, that's listening to this stuff. So, that's what it comes down to. If that wasn't there, it would be a completely different story. But, there are thousands of artists out there making, over six figures just from streaming, you typically hear about the massive artists who, bitch and complain that they're not making any money, and, the Taylor Swifts and those types of catalogs. And the fact of the matter is those artists make a shitload of money, but it's more indicative of the types of deals those artists sign, where their label or their, is recouping, or they're splitting those royalties between a dozen different songwriters or whatever it is, So if you own your masters and all that stuff, and you learn a handful of skills, and you can learn how to get the music in front of the right audience, you can absolutely make money, with streaming and grow an audience that way. So it's doable.
Yeah, for sure. You and I were talking before we pressed record, when I was talking about the podcasting world, about how this has to be a slow roll process. It's not going to happen overnight. And so many people think they throw the record out there, boom, it's going to happen, right?
Right.
And for you guys in Throw the Fight, that's 19 years. 19 years of different forms of marketing, just boots to the ground,
totally
hobnobbing with everybody, shaking hands, kissing babies, playing the politics.
Yeah. At the end of the day, man, we're a slave to the grind, that's just...
Right. But what you're experiencing is the fruits of hard-earned labor.
Yes. Nearly 2 decades later. Yes. Which is crazy, but that's what it takes. You gotta be willing to at the end of the day, you got to do it because you love doing it, and you're creating art and stuff like that. But, that stuff takes time and money and energy. And I'm of the mindset that, artists should also get paid for that stuff too. It's it's not,
right.
This stuff isn't cheap to do, So yeah, but it is doable, but yeah, it takes time. That's for sure. It takes a lot less time now than it did, back in the day, for sure. You can compound that time frame a lot faster now.
Social media of course, is driven. It's all algorithm driven, and all the marketing for small businesses is algorithm driven. Are there similar algorithms with streaming services that you can leverage to your benefit?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, every platform pretty much has algorithms, and just so many data points that they're tracking and using to inform like playlist decisions and features and things like that. But at the end of the day, like you can't really control that much of it. I mean, other than just like pitching your stuff when you put it out there, but between like the editorial stuff, and playlists that you can create on your own and other user playlists. I mean, there's endless opportunities out there to get your music in front of an audience.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, every platform has their version of, editorial playlists, and especially Spotify. I mean, I think I focus the most on Spotify. So I'm more familiar with that one more so than like, Deezer and a lot of the others and Apple Music. But between just like algorithmic playlists and all the various like Release Radar and Discover Weekly and all that stuff, they do a great job at putting your music in front of the right audience and finding fans for you, for sure.
Yeah. It seems that their user interface is the most friendly out of all of them and the most universal out of all of them.
Yeah, for sure. I like it. I mean, I love it. I wish the music didn't sound like shit, but I that's the one thing I never got is why audio on Spotify sounds like so compressed and just hot garbage compared to, YouTube or SoundCloud or something like that. That never made sense to me. But other than that, it's great.
Kind of felt that there was a similar effect. Do you remember Reverb Nation? Did you ever use that?
Yeah, I think so. Like early on, the problem with Reverb Nation is the only people who used it were other musicians. Like no one who wasn't a musician was on Reverb Nation or using that as a platform, at least in my experience. So we never did much with it.
Well, before streaming took a hold, Reverb Nation was kind of like the stopgap between MySpace and whatever was next. Because after MySpace was acquired by Fox, and then it was supposed to be redesigned to be a music interface, and then it just was horrible, and it was hard to use. There were a bunch of stopgaps that kind of came out at the same time, and the reason I brought up Reverb Nation is because of the compression rate with some of the audio. When you would upload it, you would have this amazing sounding disc. You upload it to Reverb Nation and it sounds like it was recorded on a tape player in your garage. Totally. And that's just kind of going to the point that you were making about Spotify and the fidelity difference between an Apple Music and a Spotify, but Spotify's interface is better.
Well, yeah, the interface is better, and they have a way larger market share compared to everything else. So there's more people on the platform. So, artists earn less on that platform, but when you look at the market share and, the potential for discovery, you're way better off on Spotify than a lot of the other ones, at least, as of this point.
Going back to the social media thing, I'm sorry, I keep circling back to that.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
With the pandemic, the platform TikTok really took off in the biggest way possible. Myself, my old ass has a TikTok page for this podcast.
I was going to ask you, are you a TikToker now?
Holy shit, man. I get sucked in. I hate to admit that. Now, I will tell you, and I've talked about this on an earlier podcast, there is a difference between what you're fed on your For You page if you're a personal account versus a business account. Like the business account is more meaningful content, where if you're just using it as a personal account, they're going to show you things that guys our age are into. And it's kind of crazy. But that's one that I have never. You have movies like what is it, The Social Dilemma, and stuff that talk about how algorithms work and how they're deconstruct what we're viewing and how it's just kind of trends and what have you. TikTok is one where I have never seen the algorithm so blatant before. And
Sure.
as a TikTok user and using that platform to promote this podcast, I look at it and I see music acts on there all the time. And I would think if I were still in the music business that I would hop on that as soon as possible.
Yeah, and see, I haven't gotten to that point yet. We need to do that though. Like we haven't set up a TikTok for the band yet, and we should probably do that. That's actually a good point, and I'm making a note to do that because
that was not my intent, Ryan.
Well, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, there's an opportunity there for sure, and then on the other side, it's like, oh, another fucking platform to like deal with and make content for. Like, I need another platform. Like, I need a hole in my head at this point. But it's I mean, I'm only saying that out of ignorance, because I'm not on it right now. So I just need to bite the bullet and get on there.
I was not a believer, dude. I've got teenagers and they were on it first. And truth be told, I got a TikTok account so I can monitor whatever shit they were watching and their behavior on TikTok. And then I got sucked into it myself. And I have found bloggers. I have found podcasters. I have found new music acts. I have found like nerd content that I really enjoy. And it's like, man, and the thing is as a user interface, as a TikTok user, somebody that's using it for my business, I could create a 1-minute video for the podcast. And then I could take that video and put it on all my other platforms. Mm-hmm. And it's one piece of content that could go over like 4 or 5 different social media platforms. And I'm done for the day.
I like it. I like it. I need to get on that. Yeah, man. That's right. I like it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's for sure. I like creating something once and repurposing it and having it work for you over and over and over again,
Oh, hell yes. Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
That's part of this Zennial lifestyle that we have.
Yeah. That's what's so great about YouTube and stuff like that. It's like, right. You get videos up there and you only have to put it up there once and it can be discovered. It's not the case with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all the others, Right. Absolutely. So you have made yourself a living working with other artists and using your creative side. Creative director for Decibel. Yes. Talk about that. Well, it's just I'm just a solopreneur. My business is just me and a handful of other contractors that I'll bring in, depending on the project. But right now we're focused on web design. So I work with a lot of bands, building websites for bands and other small businesses. It's not just entertainment industry stuff, but I'm doing a lot of web design, a lot of EPKs, and then, a lot of e-commerce stores, and then helping those artists get off the social media hamster wheel and put like processes and systems in place that will allow them to help, scale their business and their fan base largely on autopilot, and that's where like the email marketing comes into play and copywriting and landing pages and all that geeky like tech marketing stuff. I love that stuff, so that's kind of my jam, and what I focus on for the most part for the day job.
So how has that business changed in light of the past 2 years, in light of the pandemic? Let's call it what it is. In light of the pandemic, in light of the socio-political strife, because I know both things have contributed to the economy and the work from home economy and the digital economy.
Yeah.
Have you benefited from any of that?
Yeah, definitely. Not a ton, but if there's anything that I've learned like in the last 2 years, it's that artists cannot rely on playing live anymore. You can't rely on making money from touring. That is a very, very, the margins on that are just so thin for independent bands, that are trying to come up. Like it's not even feasible, but it's fun, it certainly plays a part, but you got to be able to learn how to, build an audience without playing shows and touring. So that is the biggest thing, and the other thing that I've seen is just, has to do with social media. Like you can't rely, like, you got to get these people off of these platforms and onto the platforms that you own. You know, like, typically when independent artists struggle to build a fan base, they're recording music, they're releasing music, they're, you know, blasting it on social media, and they're wondering why, you know, they don't make any money and revenue. And and then they get frustrated, and then it's like, well, I guess we got to go back in the studio and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. You know, it's like you're releasing stuff into a vacuum, you know, and it's because what I've found in my experience is that they don't have these other systems in place to kind of like connect the dots for people online, you know, and that's really going to be your website, your e-commerce, your email marketing, and then using social to kind of like tie your brand together, point people back to that stuff, and then, you know, start to own your audience a little bit more. So you really got to own your audience. That's really what it comes down to at this point, you know.
That's amazing that you said all that. I don't know if you've ever listened to it. Have you ever listened to Story of the Years podcast?
No, I haven't. I probably should, because they're one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, mine too. And that was, it was so funny. So about a year ago, they started this podcast, and it was good gym fodder. It was something to listen to while I was running on a treadmill or lifting weights. And the funny thing is, and I think it was probably totally unintentional on their part, but it became kind of this blueprint because of all the guys they were having on the show of how to manage your career really without touring anymore. You know, and they talked about that very same thing. And specifically around the time they did the Page Avenue live stream, the In the Wake of Determination live stream. And, you know, they were openly talking about the adaptive business model of the new music industry. And you're right, you know, with fuel prices and venues like being restricted in some places and not restricted in other places, you got to reinvent the wheel to a certain degree. Yeah,
totally. And I've kind of like, my business really hasn't changed that much over the pandemic, in the sense that I've been working from home like for years, you know, and so I wasn't like, I kind of left the corporate world long before the pandemic. So it wasn't really like I was transitioning, you know, out of an office, you know, from home, you know, and doing that, you know, that's made a huge difference and made things a lot, you know, certainly difficult for a lot of people. So I was very fortunate that didn't affect me too much. But at the end of the day, like, people need websites. You need to own this stuff and not rely on platforms that you don't control, and, you know, you can only do so much with. So, that has never been more important than within the last 2 years since the pandemic.
For sure. So have you guys considered doing any kind of live stream type concert? Or have you done any live stream concerts since the pandemic has been going on?
We haven't. No. And it's not that we don't want to. We certainly want to. It just hasn't been something that we've focused on. You know, we decided to focus more on writing and recording more frequently and releasing more music. Now things are going the opposite direction again. They were looking great there for a little bit, and right. Now it's going the opposite direction. We did manage to start playing again, you know, like this past summer, you know, we did maybe 5 or 6 shows last year, and they were our first shows that we got to do like within the last year and a half prior to that, you know. So we've been kind of hoping to like that things were going to start going back to normal a little bit, and now that's not the case. But I don't know. I'm hopeful that things will start turning around here, hopefully soon, you know, in 2022. We'll see.
So you're mostly based out of the Minneapolis area still, correct?
Yep, correct. Yeah, I'm in Victoria. It's about 30 minutes west of Minneapolis, out in the suburbs.
How has, like, the city of the Twin Cities in general, Minneapolis, St. Paul, how have they adapted to the pandemic? Are there any specific restrictions? Were there mandates or anything along those lines?
Yeah, there were definitely mask mandates, and a lot of restrictions, you know, that way. I mean, things started to open back up, you know, within the last, like, I don't know how many months ago. Like, dude, honestly, this stuff has been going on for so long, it seems at this point. Like, I don't even know. Like, I don't even, like, the timelines are completely blending together. Like, I want to say in the last few months, things have started to get progressively better. But now my wife just told me that Minneapolis and St. Paul have more mandatory, more mandates going into effect this weekend with, wearing masks and stuff like that. And I totally get it. But yeah, it's up and down, and I don't know, man. People are it's so tiring and exhausting.
Dude, it totally is. So I don't even live in Omaha anymore. I live in Lincoln. So I live in the state capital. And the entire state did not have a mask mandate, but the city of Lincoln did. And that was because they were grandfathered into an old law that it's really weird. It's really weird. The governor cannot mandate one way or the other, but the mayor can here. So it's been an unusual situation. Yeah.
And that's what's made it hard all around, because every state is different. Every city is different. This stuff is changing almost on a monthly basis. There's no consensus on anything. It's just created so much confusion, because of, there hasn't been a cohesive, message and narrative since the jump, so
people are going with, let's make it a medical issue. Let's make it a political issue. Let's make it a public health issue. In the brass tacks of it all, it's like this shows the weakness of our sociology because we can't come together on a common, consensus one way or the other.
Totally. It's sad. Unfortunately, people with agendas from the beginning, that's what it came down to. And it's divided the country. That's really the end, the short and long of it, but.
Right. Listen to us talk all ambiguously about this. We're all being ambiguous. We're not putting our stake in the ground on either side of the issue. We're just saying, man, this has been some shit we've had to deal with.
Yeah, I'm just saying it sucks, I don't know. I like to try and be positive, I struggle with that. I'm more of a realist, and I struggle with trying to remain positive. I feel like I have to work a lot more at remaining positive throughout the whole thing. That's certainly been harder to do. I don't know if have you found that to be the case too? Within the last couple of years?
Absolutely.
Just with mental health and all that stuff. That's required a lot more work for everybody.
Yes. And I'll be very transparent, and I have no problem being transparent and vulnerable about it. I was on this amazing fitness journey that I think started, 2012, 2013. I was getting incredibly good shape. I had an umbilical hernia that I had fixed in 2016. And so it slowed me down for a little bit. And then I got back on it, and I was just kicking so much ass. I was reading books, listening to books. I came out of 2019 probably in the best mental and physical condition that I had been in since I was a teenager. The pandemic hit, and it threw all of my routines in disarray. But I struggled up and down, and I've talked about it a million times on this podcast about how my routines got fucked up by the pandemic. But 2021 was almost harder because I felt like I lost my sense of discipline, and I felt like I lost a little bit of my sense of humanity. So as a result, yes, my mental health suffered in a big way, to the point where the end of August, beginning of September, I had what was a near nervous breakdown. And for the first time since I was a teenager, I had to get some medical intervention with it.
Sure.
So, to answer your question, have I dealt with it? You betcha.
Yeah, and that's the case for so many people, across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's do you ever have instances since this has been going on where you have lapses of short-term memory or brain fog because of the fatigue of the whole situation?
Yeah, for sure. I started drinking a lot more. That was maybe last year, and I recently made the decision I'm just gonna stop drinking. But that was literally this week, so I'm not gonna like pat myself on the back at this point.
Right.
Like I'm only a week in at this point, but yeah, I mean, it affected me with alcohol for sure, a lot, and it got to the point where like my wife and I are like, oh, now we're joining the case club at this winery, and we're getting like cases of wine shipped to the house, and we're literally like drinking a bottle of wine like every other night, and it got to the point where I gained a little bit of weight, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta cut back, man. It's not good, but yeah, it's tough.
It's been hard, but and I'm glad that the upside of it all is we've reached a point in society where we can have open dialogue about things like this now. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the good byproducts of the pandemic is like we're all in this sinking ship together, and it's like, well, since the Titanic is going down, we might as well be the violinists standing on it, right?
Totally. Yeah. 100%.
How has becoming a father changed your perception of your place in the music industry?
Oh man, that's a great question. It for sure it made us realize that we don't want to be on the road nonstop. That's for sure. So that's the first thing. We've all got little kids at this point. So my kids are 5 and 9. I'm the only dude in the band with 2 kids, but everyone else has Chris, our other guitar player, his son is 9, same age as my daughter, and then Jeff and Cade, their kids are both younger. They're toddlers. They're 2 at this point. But we're a dad band, at this point. So we realize, we just want to be more picky and choose, with what the opportunities that we take on, and we realize that we don't have to tour for the sake of touring. We can, pick and choose our battles and call our own shots and do what we want to. So that's the beauty of it at the end of the day. So for us, it's just been great, focusing on recording and writing songs and just doing more of that, so it's been nice. That's kind of been our philosophy, for the last handful of years, so yeah, I mean, it really helps put things in perspective. That's for sure, but especially when it comes to touring and stuff like that,
So this is good because, circling back to the whole, the drinking thing, I know back in the day when we used to do shows together, it was kind of like a bunch of Frank the Tanks running around the bar. And I was talking to somebody not too long ago about playing with you guys in Minneapolis, and I ran up a $250 credit card bill, and we had free drinks in the green room, and I still ran up a $250 credit card bill in one night on drinks.
For sure. It happens.
But yeah. But the thing is not too long ago, actually about 2 years ago, shortly before the pandemic, I quit drinking altogether, not because I had an issue with it, but I noticed a correlation with anxiety and in paying attention with my fitness that I gave up booze. But if I was still drinking, this would have been a crazy 2 years. But going back to the point about the parents and being parents and playing in a band still, do you notice that your conduct is more informed now that everybody is parents?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely think about that a lot more, and I think it's, it has to do with being a dad and a parent, and it has to do with just getting older. It's like when we're playing shows, it's like dropping F-bombs and stuff like that. That's just, that appeal is gone at this point. We're a lot more PG in that regard. So, and yeah, I mean, it's like, dude, the older you get, like your body just can't handle it anymore. We'll go out and not that we tour like all the time or nonstop. We really never have, but we would go do long weekends and stuff like that all the time. And the last one we did, it was only 2 shows on a Friday and a Saturday. And we came back and it was like a truck had ran over you for like 4 days after that, because it's just like, we're 40 years old plus at this point. And so yeah, it just gets harder, and as you have more dependence and you get older, it gets harder to do. So it's all the more important to just find ways that you can continue doing it on your own terms. that's kind of what we try and focus on, and what we've been doing, and it's still working, thank God, so we're still having a blast and still loving it. So yeah, here we are.
Right. But you learn to do things more efficiently whenever you have that focal point at home. You're like, man, I'm only going to do it if it's worth it. And I have to find the most efficient way of doing it possible.
Yes, 100%. Like back in the day, within the last, even, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we used to have tons of overhead. We had a rehearsal space. We had a vehicle, a trailer. We had all kinds of stuff we were, paying for, that the band had to play like 8 or 9 shows a month just to cover our expenses. And at the time, like, we weren't earning on any of our music. It was all under license with labels and other parties and stuff like that. So it wasn't like now, things really turned the corner for us when we started, when our old license deals expired and we started owning our masters and our music again. And the label, side of things, that's been, a game changer for us. So that's helped a lot. But yeah, it's, it's tough, man. That's for sure. You can't drink and you just can't do that stuff anymore. It's just, it's completely lost its appeal to me at this point,
So what do you say to people that say that you can't blend business with art? Because I remember towards my twilight years playing in music, I would refer to it maybe accidentally. I'd be like, well, I'm not putting a bad product out there. And, you get this high and mighty artist that would say, my art is not a product. What do you say to people like that?
I would say then you're a hobbyist, like if you want to put out music and you don't care that, people hear it or anything like that, it's a hobby. If you're just like a bedroom guitar player or something like that, or, you're doing it for the art, that's great, if that's what you want to do. But at the end of the day, it's a business, like your fans are your customers. Like this stuff costs money. So if you want to take it seriously, like you got to treat it as a business. So that's what we've done. And that's what what I'm always preaching to my clients and everyone that I talk to as well too. So it's like, you gotta grow your business. That's really what it is at the end of the day. But if it's a hobby for you, great. Go do your music hobby. But yeah, I mean, I'm of the mindset that why can't it be both? Like, why can't it be art and still make something you make a living from? Like, I mean, what is it with artists where people don't expect them to make a living, and that's okay? That's not okay with any other profession, so no one expects people to do their jobs for free, but somehow, like, we still have to deal with that. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, I never really bought that philosophy. I typically, if someone has that attitude, it's like, okay, man, good for you.
Right. Just don't ask to be on any of my shows.
Yeah, I mean, good luck with that, I guess, but I mean, at the end of the day, like we need people to hear the music, so that requires a handful of skills. It requires advertising. It requires so many different things, like, that are beyond just putting out music. There's so many artists out there putting out music. I can't remember what the stat is, but I think like most recently there was like Spotify or like all the DSPs, they get like 60,000 tracks a day, something like that. There's so many artists out there. Like, if you're putting your music out there and you're expecting people to discover it on its own merits, you're just setting yourself up to fail, because it doesn't work like that at all. Like, that's why you have so many independent artists like dropping music out there to crickets, and posting on social media and no one's listening and they're not cutting through. It's because those methods don't work. They just don't work anymore. So.
Right. It's a symbiotic and reciprocal relationship where the audience is your consumer, but they're also your boss at the same time. So you have to please your boss to keep yourself employed so you can play for your boss later on down the line.
To an extent. I mean, at the end of the day, for us in our case, like, we're only putting out music that we like, and that we approve of. We don't have a label or we're not taking any other like outside input other than the four of us and whatever, other songwriters and producers we're working with on the song at that time. So, there's certainly that extent of it, but you want to be able to challenge yourself. You still want to challenge yourself, and you still want to grow and put out great music and great art, so, but yeah, you can't, I don't know. I mean, you can't really do a whole 180 on that stuff and expect people, expect it to go over well. Very few bands and artists can do that and have it work, and there's typically a lot of outside other factors, playing into that. So,
yeah, wholeheartedly agree. So it's 2022. To kind of close this up, what are some words that you would have for somebody practicing in their garage right now? They're ready to hit the stage. They're ready to start marketing their music. What is some advice that you have for them right now at this moment in time?
Sure. Yeah. If you're just starting out and you're, you don't have a lot of, music out, I think the most important thing is it always starts with the music. So, everything else stems from that. You can't, otherwise you can't really have terrible sounding music. Now, music is subjective, right? So what one person thinks is a great song, another person is going to think is complete garbage, so it's subjective to an extent, but what's not subjective is the quality of the recording of your masters, and things like that. So you want to put all of your effort on putting out the best product possible. So that's thing one is the songwriting and the music always comes first above everything else. Two is release less music more frequently. Okay. You don't need to put out a full album, if it's your first release or even, your second, put out a handful of singles, snowball that stuff, tack the second single onto the one before that and the third single onto the two before that and stuff like that. So put out less music more frequently and then just, build your brand, and start owning those channels, so a lot of it has to do with the music, the branding, and then just the tiny habits that you develop over time to kind of grow your career, and you don't have to do all of the things. You just have to do, like I said, a handful of things really well. So, and consistently. So that's the biggest things. Those are the things that have made the biggest impact on us and what we've always focused on. So, and then if you're ready to play live, do that too, because that's the fun part and do it on your own terms. You don't need to go tour nonstop, but if you have the means to do that and you're young and it's, you're just starting out, then go do it because there's still a ton that you're going to learn. The best way to get tight is by playing every day, so there's a lot of benefits to doing that too, but I don't think you can go into it right away thinking that's going to be a moneymaker for you. It's more so about finding your audience and growing your audience and just kind of building the momentum. That's the biggest thing, I think.
Sir, it has been a pleasure seeing you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I have got to make it a point to get my ass up north when it's not so damn cold outside. It's January, friends. And we got to run into each other in the real world.
Yes, I guarantee we will. Likewise, dude. Thank you so much for having me. This has been rad.
That was fantastic having the opportunity to catch up with an old friend. You can find Ryan online at ryanbaustert.com, throwthefight.com, or decibelpromo.com. Go check him out. Seek out his help. He will help your brand in major ways. You can find all of this info in the detail information of this episode. And while you're seeking things out, make sure you check out Caught on the Mic on all forms of social media: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also find me at www.caughtonthemic.com. A lot of kick-ass stuff planned for 2022, and I am so glad that you are on this journey with me today. This has been Caught on the Mic with Michael Clark. I'm Michael Clark. Until next time, thank you.